Hey everybody, I'm going to try and make this video quick. This is part one for the how to wire your off-road lights to your vehicle. This is going to be more of a video of showing you how to do it, what you need to do to prepare for it, what kind of supplies you should have, etc. So I'm going to try to get through this as quick as I can. I know it's really hard for me to do that. So first of all, you need to do a lot of research on your lights. You need to find out what the wattage of your lights are. Now be careful when you're doing LED lights. A lot of these Chinese companies, these I can't stand China, but they always advertise their LED lights 400 watts, 500 watts, 8,000 watts, you know. They just say that, but it's not actually 400 watts or 500 watts or whatever. It's probably half or less than that, okay? So they're just telling you what it's equivalent to as far as halogen goes. It's an old tack that's been going on for decades. It's the same thing with all of these lights. It's just an old bullshit tactic that I wish they would just stop doing. But anyway, so there are charts online that will show you the maximum run, meaning the length from the battery to the lights, and the amperage that wire can handle. And what you need to do is you need to figure out what the wattage is of your lights. So I actually ordered another set of these lights up here. So I'm going to have 4 of these Raleigh off-roading lights. They're halogen. I just kind of look like them. You know, the more I look at it, the more I like it. At first, I was like, it's ugly. It's plastic. You know, it's got a glass housing, though. But, you know, I kind of am getting attached to them. They kind of look good on this truck, especially if I had 4 of them up there. So I ordered a set of them, used set, so I'm going to have 4. So that's 400 watts. The run from the battery up there is 7 to 8 feet. I only have a 10 gauge wire that's about 13 feet right here. According to those charts for that run, the 10 gauge wire should just be able to handle 30 to 40 amps and it'll be okay. Now 400 watts divided by 12 volts, because the battery is 12 volt, when it's not running it's 12 volt, is roughly 33 amps. So I'm kind of like at the 30 to 35 range. That's fine. Now, when the vehicle's running, it's going to be charging at 13.5, 14 volts, and that's actually going to drop the amperage through the line to 28, 29 amps. So that's perfect and plenty for 10 gauge wire. The 10 gauge is easily going to be able to handle this, but I would not put another light on there. I would not do 500 watts. 400 is, to me, about the maximum. To be honest, if I had 8 gauge, I probably would do 8, but I only have 10, and 10 will be okay. So now these charts are showing you the maximum amperage before you have a voltage drop. When you have a voltage drop, that's what causes the wires to warm up a little bit. A slight voltage drop is not going to cause a fire. It's not going to make the wire get like so hot it's going to, you know, melt through your insulation, through your headliner, and cause a fire or anything like that. You just want to be mindful of too much power going through the line, because then that could actually happen. But a few amps over is not going to cause an issue. So that's pretty standard for car makers anyway. They put undersized wiring on everything. It's just they do that to cheap out and maximize the wiring, you know, and minimize their expenses. So, but anyway, off to supplies. So after you figure out your charts and your measurements and your distance and your wattage and your amperage, then you go online and order the correct size wire that you need. But as far as supplies, you're also going to need these ring terminals. These ring terminals are extremely handy, and you definitely should have a box of those things, because you use these to connect to your battery. Now, you don't have to connect everything to your battery. You could have a power distribution center, or PDC, which is what my Wagoneer has. So I have a fuse, relay, and a PDC, and a bus ground terminal all right here. So nothing is hooked up to my battery except for one big wire for ground, one big wire for power, and that's it. So ring terminals, you need heat shrink. You need these rubber grommets. I forgot what they're called. Yeah, just rubber grommets. You need those for when you drill into the firewall or drill into the floor, anything metal. You put these in between there. That keeps the wires from chafing. Now you figure, well, that's common sense. Why do you have to tell me that? Yeah, it's common sense. Sorry for the noise. That's common sense, but look at that. So clearly there's no rubber grommet there, and there's 2 wires going through there, and that was me. I did that. Those two wires, though, one of them is just a trigger wire. The other one is just for the tachometer, so it's nothing that's going to like cause a major fire or anything like that. I do need to find the proper grommet for that, though, but that's just to give you an example. Wiring. So this is 16 gauge wire. I actually use silicone wire, and the reason why I use silicone wire is because if this will focus, which my phone just not like focusing at all, this 16 gauge wire for the silicone wire has a higher heat resistance than the typical wire you see right here. So this wire, oh my god, will this freaking thing focus? So this wire is the typical PVC wiring, and this was heated up by my torch for like 5 seconds, and you can see it melted, and it actually was on fire for a while. When I used the torch on the silicone wire, all it did was just turn it white. It didn't melt anything. The silicone is actually still there. You see when I rub it off? Still there, no problems. So silicone wire is definitely better wiring. Sorry for the blurry camera. You're going to need these type of spade connectors, or these, yeah, I think they're spade connectors. The typical ones you guys probably have are these from like AutoZone or whatever. These really are terrible. They're just like a really hard plastic. They tend to crack and break and they fall off. I don't recommend using those. You definitely are going to need butt connectors. I recommend getting a kit that has more of the pink ones and blue ones than the yellow, because I go through so many of these pink ones. It is absolutely insane. Usually I go through all of the pink ones, and then my kit just has tons of yellow and blue. So you're going to need relays. These are the 40 amp relays, standard relays, 4-prong. You don't need 5-prong. And fuses. So I recommend a bag of fuses. These are all fuses from like 1 amp, 2 amps, 7.5, 20, 25, 30, 35, up to 40 amps. Standard switches. These are just cheapy switches that I have on hand that I'm going to be using for the lights. A relay holder. You don't have to have one of these, but they do come in handy. And the reason why I say you don't have to have them is because you can actually hook up the relay using these little spade terminals instead. It's perfectly fine doing it that way. But with this relay holder, it keeps everything more secure and out of each other's way, etc. But be mindful, this one is 16 gauge. So if I'm going to be using this on my 10 gauge one for the roof lights, you definitely don't want to be using this. You either have to pull them out and redo the wiring with these connectors right here and then plug it back in, or you do it separately like this. And I'm going to be doing it separately like this because these connectors can't actually handle a 10 gauge wire. They're just not big enough. So I'm going to be doing it independently on the relay itself with a spade terminal. Now, inline fuses. I thought I had a 10 gauge inline fuse. I must have had them and I used them on the Wagoneer, but all I have are 12 gauge and 16 gauge. You don't want to put a 12 gauge inline fuse on a 10 gauge wire. So to get around that, you take your 10 gauge wire and you hook it up, to these yellow ones, these yellow connectors, and then these you can plug into an actual fuse. That is your inline fuse. It's very, very simple. This is a 40 amp inline fuse right here. So I'm going to be doing something just like this to my setup until I can buy an inline fuse like one of these water protected ones. So that's pretty much all you need for supplies. You need the correct wire. You need to do the mathematics. You need to do the measurements. You need to have your inline fuse. You need to have your relay. You need to have your terminals, your spade terminals, your butt connectors, your ring terminals, heat shrink, rubber grommets in case you drill through the firewall. And as far as like wire strippers go, just basic wire strippers work. But I do recommend a pair of wire cutters like these because these also have that little end right there with a little tooth on it. And this thing just will not focus. And you can use that to crush your ring terminals, your ring terminals and your butt connectors together. I don't recommend using these to do that, or a pair of pliers. That doesn't really work. It doesn't secure it properly. It's better to have the proper tool to do that with. So anyway, thanks for watching. Part 2 will be the actual edited video of me putting this all together and showing you step by step of how I do it. So thanks for watching.